All right, we are live. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. It's Friday night, Law of One. Hopefully my microphone's working right now. Say hello in the chat. I'm going to take this overlay off. All right, welcome everybody. Please share this out. I didn't have time to say anything in the chat. So if you're here, say hello to me and share it out. I actually shared this on my page today. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, and we're on my page on Facebook. So I shared it over to Orion Rising because I was in a hurry and I didn't realize I clicked on my page, not on Orion Rising. So I haven't shared it over there. So share this out. And if you're here, say hello in the chat. Otherwise, I don't know that you guys just see people, but it is the Law of One. Pardon me. This is the Law of One today, and we are live. And I see that there are some people in the audience. That's good. So it's Friday. For those of you who live on the other side of the Prime Meridian, it's already Saturday morning. So it's Friday for everybody on this side, from west going east, right? The further east you go, it's tomorrow. So welcome everybody. And I was running late. I was talking to Cassie online, and it was running behind. So make sure you share this out. I didn't have time to share it out. I guess I could try and share it out now because we're sitting in here. I'll share it out. So, like I said, welcome. Hi, everybody. Right, welcome. I see Denise, you're there. Hopefully that went into the studio. It's weird that I don't see that comment. You said hello. I don't see that comment in the studio, which is bizarre because I should be able to see it. So weird that it's not, right? That's bizarre. See, now that's oops, and I'm trying to type in the chat and I'm messing that up. Right. So I don't know why that is. Maybe it doesn't. It's not showing live, or maybe it's showing private on my page. I hate when that does that. And Facebook always says, "Oh no, it's not us, it's you," right? And I'm like, no, because I've shared it and it's supposed to be public. So I'm going to check the sharing right now and see why that chat from my Facebook page is not coming into the chat in the studio. Which I can't figure out why that is, right? In fact, it's only showing when I talk, it's only showing that the chat is going to YouTube. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here, right? So yeah, I'm not sure why this is doing what it's doing, but the chat is not going out to the Facebook page, and it doesn't say here that it's not, but it's not, because when I type in the chat, it's only going to the YouTube. So I have to literally go over here and look in the chat to find out, right? So everybody's wondering where it is. Here, I'll give you the link, saying they can't find it. So that's because it's on my page, and for whatever reason, it's not. You guys aren't being able to find it, which is weird. So I've set up a Facebook watch. And all the chat should come into here. So I just put that in the Law of One chat for you guys. I don't know why, for whatever reason. I'm going to share this out right now from here, public. So I'll see why that's not, the chats weren't filtering in, and hopefully the chats will filter into StreamYard now. Right, I don't know what's going on there. Otherwise, I'll just have to watch the chat there to see what you guys are saying, which is not a big deal, right? So yeah, it's still just showing that the chat's only going to YouTube from the studio. So I will have to stay over here and watch, which is not a big deal. I can see you guys there. I can see Rick is there. I can see Cody is there. I can see Denise is there. But none of those chats are going into the StreamYard studio. And StreamYard usually will say, hey, listen, the chat's not working properly. I don't know why it's doing that, right? So hold on here. I'm going to mute this again. Sorry. So now I'm in here, and I'll just go back and forth between that and the studio when I press play and stuff like that and stop. So that way I can see your guys' comments, because I don't know why, but it's not coming from Facebook going into the StreamYard chat. I have no idea why it's not doing that, but it's not. So now Twitter's not coming in here and Facebook's not coming in here, and only the chat that I'm saying when I talk in the chat, you guys don't see it in there. It's only going out to the chat over on YouTube. So that's crazy, right? Penny, welcome. So that's all right, because I'll just look in this chat, right? And I could probably do that on my phone, and you guys will see me looking down, which I just unplugged my phone from the wall here. So hold on a second. I'm going to dip down and plug my phone back in because it needs a charge, right? So not quite sure what's going on with that. That's annoying to me. I'll read you guys' chat in here, and I'll just, like I said, I'll switch back and forth. So whenever I have to press play, I don't know if I can do it from here. I think I can actually. And so I don't have to see what's going on there right in the studio, but I won't be able to see. I'll have to go back and forth in case somebody's on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to do a sound check. Welcome, guys. I'm going to do a sound check, and we'll get into the Law of One here. Right, Mel, welcome. Right, so let me do a sound check. I'm going to start with the Law of One, and I had just barely had enough time. I had 20 minutes. Literally in 20 minutes, I made my mother lunch, got myself something to eat, set up everything here, pulled up the Law of One, edited it so that the computer would say I am Ra, not I am RA, and still got online at the right time. It's just for some reason, which I haven't figured out, the StreamYard chat is not going. It doesn't usually. It'll tell me that you have lost communication with a certain group, but it didn't. And the chat's supposed to be coming in there, and for some reason it's not. Right? I don't know what's going on. So like I said, share this out. I can see that a couple of you are sharing it out. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to do a sound check. Let me know if you guys can hear Raw okay, and if I have to turn it up, okay?
March 10th, 1981. 36.0 Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 36.1 Questioner. In previous communications you have spoken of the mind/body/spirit complex totality.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there real quick just so that I can make sure that you guys are hearing that, okay? Because I have to go back to the chat, right? Janice gave me a thumbs up. Okay, so hopefully that means you guys can hear it okay. So I apologize that's annoying, right? Welcome, Peter. Welcome, brother. I didn't see you there until I just looked down. Denise said, welcome, Peter. I looked up and there you were. Welcome, Peter. So literally, I don't know why that's happening, and it is, and it's annoying to me, but now I have to look at two different monitors, right? I'm just going to go back and forth between the two pictures, the two windows, but it's still annoying because it's supposed to filter into StreamYard, so I don't have to worry about that, right? All right, so let's go ahead and continue and get right into the Law of One. This is session 35, and you can see on your screen March 10th, 1981. It says audio number 32, but it's session 35. That's what screwed me up last time. For some reason, I looked at the wrong audio and got it all messed up. Remember? Okay, so let's continue.
Would you please give us a definition of the mind/body/spirit complex totality? Ra, I am Ra. There is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind/body/spirit in its eternal dance of the present may be seen in totality, and before the mind/body/spirit complex, which then becomes a part of the social memory complex, is willingly absorbed into the allness of the one creator, the entity knows itself in its totality. This mind/body/spirit complex totality functions as, shall we say, a resource for what you perhaps would call the higher self. The higher self, in turn, is a resource for examining the distillations of third density experience and programming further experience. This is also true of densities 4, 5, and 6, with the mind/body/spirit complex totality coming into consciousness in the course of 7th density. 36.2 Questioner. Then would the mind/body/spirit complex totality be responsible for programming changes in catalyst during, say, a third density experience of the mind/body/spirit complex, so that the proper catalyst would be added, shall we say, as conditions for that complex change during third density experience? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The higher self, as you call it, that is, that self which exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly, and assists, as you have indicated, in further life experience programming, as you may call it. The mind/body/spirit complex totality is that which may be called upon by the higher self aspect, just as the mind/body/spirit complex calls upon the higher self. In the one case you have a structured situation within the space/time continuum, with the higher self having available to it the totality of experiences which have been collected by an entity, and a very firm grasp of the lessons to be learned in this density.
See, here Ra is talking about you ascending to the point of having access, because you superconsciously and subconsciously have access to all of the memories that you've had for every lifetime, constantly. You become aware of that, and then you can access those. That is we're talking about getting access to the Akashic record. First, you gain access to your own self. We talked about this last time, where I talked about past lives And at least I think I talked about that on air because I talked to so many people and I'm doing work with people off air that I'm not sure if that came out on air. But we talked about when you first start gaining access to the memories of your past lives, depending on what depending on what sex you are here in this lifetime, you'll start to get the first memories, glimpses of past lives of that. Like I'm a guy. So the first 3 lives that I learned about myself that came to me were all about men. They were all men because I'm a man now. So that's how it introduces your higher self. The universe will introduce it to you. If you're a woman, you'll see yourself in past lives where you were a woman first, until you open up your mind to the possibility and ascend to the possibility of reincarnation. That doesn't happen, and then it does. And then when you start opening up your mind and get to a place where you go, maybe I wasn't just like I'm a man. Maybe I wasn't just a man in every lifetime. Was I a woman? Then what happens is then you start getting past lives when you were able to access that, because now you're asking for that and you're ready to see that, ready to know I wasn't always the sex. I've been both man and woman. And then when you start saying, wait a minute, was I other races besides the one that I am currently? You then start getting those past lives, access to that coming through, but you have to be ready for it and acceptant of the idea, right? So you have to ascend to that, to the idea of the possibility that it's possible. And then the universe gives you validation. So as you then start to ascend, every time you do that and you expand your consciousness, you literally gain more and more access when you're ready for it, when you can access it, because you're now ready for it and what you can access. And all of that is directly related to you and what you're ready for and what you ask the universe for and what you want to see. So what happens is, and this is where a lot of reincarnation comes into play, people get to a certain level where they're open-minded to all of those possibilities, and then they start being able to tap into the Akashic record, not knowing that now they're accessing memories that are not this particular soul's memories. And that's when people start saying, I was King Arthur, I was Holy Mary, I was Jesus, I was all of these other, I was a king, I was this and that. Because now you don't realize that just like putting in a DVD, if you put in a DVD and the DVD is filmed in first person, so you don't see the person's face unless they look in a mirror, just like you would be in your own body, and you don't watch it on television, but you put it on those Meta goggles, it literally, you will see it as if you're like in another body. Okay. And that's the way the Akashic records actually play for you, with all the motions, all of the taste, all the smells, all of the everything that the body recorded that was recording it. And then when you expand past that and have the realization that I'm not actually Holy Mary, and I wasn't actually Holy Mary, but I have access to that memory, which is being played from her recording as if I am her when I watch it. Because then you see the emotion, you feel the emotion and everything that's going on in that scenario. It's vital for us to have that recorded that way. That's why it's all recorded. And it's also recorded from third person standpoint as well, and from everybody else. So whatever I see when I'm talking to a person, and they're what they see from their angle and what they're thinking from their angle is also recorded. And you can access that later to correlate those things, to see what he said, she said, and what he thought, she thought about in any scenario if you really want to. And as you expand your consciousness, this becomes more and more apparent to you, but people get stuck in that, and then they get really, they diminish without realizing it, and they go to their ego, and then they start going, I am somebody that's, I'm a god, I'm a goddess, I'm in charge, I'm the savior, I'm this, because you had access to, and you didn't realize that the access that you had doesn't mean you were that person. Okay. It means that you have access to it as if you were that person, to know you can access what it felt like to be crucified when Jesus was crucified. You can access all of the memories of him and everything that he went through, that where he got, tortured, whipped, beaten, all of that. Okay. You can go and access those memories and live them and feel them the same way he lived them and felt them at the time. That is how the Akashic or halls of Amente, whatever you call that, galactic record, right, is recorded, so that we can see that. Look, I actually have somebody on YouTube talking. Lady Cody, Right. Is it Lady Cody Redneck? Rennick. Sorry, I didn't have my glasses. Welcome. So if you say anything in the chat over there, because I have, for whatever reason today, StreamYard split the chat and is not accepting the chat from Twitter or from Facebook into the StreamYard studio. So I am going back and forth. So if you have questions over on YouTube, you guys can type them in, and I will check both chats to find out what's going on. Okay. So let me get back to that. So what Ra's talking about here is you becoming aware of having access to your higher self first, and then from there you start to realize that your higher self is aware of you, and you become aware of the higher self and realize that you're integrating and that you are the same, that you're not separate beings. At first you think you're a separate being. I'm here, and then there's my higher self. And you see that in the third dimensional ideology of separation. So you think your higher self is a different personality than you are. It is, because that higher self is completely unveiled. And you down here, you're this personality in this particular lifetime, but you are that. So you only think you are when you're down here, because the way the body works, the pain body and this reality, it makes you think this is real. So when you're indoctrinated as a child, when you first come in and your mind wiped, you're completely veiled, then you're indoctrinated into this reality. It's not until you ascend and start to realize that you are something, right? Because this is the very first place that you are self-aware. And then you're like, I think, therefore I am. And then you start going, well, then what is all of this about? And you're instinctively driven to kind of figure that out. If you don't ascend past the bottom three chakras up to the heart chakra or above that specifically, you will not access this information. You will always stay in the lower three chakras, which is this place, the lower three. We are in the third chakra. This is what this place is, the yellow ray chakra. Okay. So then if you don't ever get out of this place, you will never see this place as anything other than what this is. And that's people right there. They want to, sorry. So Cody said, I switched over so I could answer my phone and not glitch. That's funny. All right. So that's cool. That's okay. I'm all right with that. Whatever you have to do. If you're over here, I'm okay with that. Right. I'm watching. I'm paying attention either way. So I'm glad that you did that. You made accommodations so that you could actually watch and actually speak in the chat and not have to worry about your phone cutting you in and out and glitching. Right. So that's cool. I'm glad you did that. Thank you for doing that. Okay. So literally you become aware of these things, and it changes everything. Your focus. That's why I just posted that a quote from Qui-Gon Jinn. You have to realize that your focus determines your reality. Okay. And that's one of the quotes that I just quoted on, that I just put up on my reel from last night that I posted last night. And there's others there. There's three definite quotes, one from Lao Tzu, one from the Buddha, and one from Qui-Gon Jinn. And they're all talking about your mental state and your awareness. And literally knowing what we were going to talk about, because where Raw was last week and where Raw is going to be today. If you look at all the posts in between last Friday and today, those 6 posts or 7 posts, I think I posted one a day, you'll see that it's actually talking about what we were talking about in the last session and what we're talking about now. All my posts are directly related to what we're going to be talking about. To help you, pardon me as I'm choking on my saliva. So let's continue here while I clear my throat. Let's continue with Raw.
The mind/body/spirit complex totality is as the shifting sands and is in some part a collection of parallel developments of the same entity. This information is made available to the higher self aspect. This aspect may then use these projected probability/possibility vortices in order to better aid in what you would call future life programming. 36.3 Questioner.
Right. So before you ask that question, so literally you have access to this stuff. So you don't realize that subconsciously you have access to that. And a lot of people start to realize that, like somebody's born, say, an American, and they're Anglo European, yet they love everything Japanese, and they have all this Japanese artwork in their house, and they don't know why. A lot of times when they do a regression, they find out that in their last lifetime, they were actually Japanese. They brought that culture into this life because there was something about that culture that they liked to help them on their journey of what they're learning. And so they actually bring it You actually bring some of these things from your past lives into the current life to help you to digest and also help you to expand your consciousness to the possibilities of the reincarnation and the knowledge that you gain. And then you take all, and this is what Ralph's talking about, and then we'll get to the next question. Then when you pass on in this lifetime, you then go to the place of healing to see if you need any healing, and then you go to the place of reflecting. And then you have complete access to everything that you've experienced in all your lifetimes, and you take all of that into account when you design the next life that you're going to go into. What did I learn? Did I learn what I wanted to learn? Did I still not learn anything? What do I need to brush up on? And then you figure out the courses that you're going to learn, and you design your life accordingly. So you have to realize that everything that's happening to you, you think that this is happening to you. It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. I also posted that saying. I didn't invent that saying. I posted, someone else said that in reality in life somewhere. But I posted it. This isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Okay. So people are always like, why is this world so crappy? And why does God allow this to happen? And they get angry at God, and God's not doing this. You are. Truth is, you're God. You're doing this to yourself. You have decided your life, as fucked up as your life could possibly be, or as great as it is, depends on your, and is determined by your state of mind, what you want. If your life is screwed up, it's because you put yourself into the situation to screw your life up, and you're continuing to do that. Or you were born into it and you decided to go through that. Like say you were born as a slave, because there's slaves all over the world. Okay. There's more slaves in the world currently today than there were when everybody knew that there were slaves. This is an actual fact that people have looked up. You can look that up. Okay. People are like, oh, you know, the white people came and stole all the Africans. There is more than 70,000 slaves in Africa today, not owned by white people, all owned by other black people. Okay. That's just in Africa currently. You can look that up. It's actually, the number's like 77,000. Not a joke. Okay. But in every country, you don't know it. I don't know what countries you are in the world, right? I know some of you are in Australia. Some of you are in America. Some of you are in Canada, just from that I know who is here in the audience. Some are in the UK and Ireland, England, stuff like that. Okay. There are slaves. There are sex slaves and there are slaves, even in this country, that people are aware of, but pretend they're not aware of. Okay. So that's the problem that we have, is that people won't admit it. They know it because they talk about it all the time. All these kids coming across the border, and there's like 70,000 kids. We don't even know where they are. They've disappeared, and they're in either sex slave or drug trade. They know this. The politicians know it. They know that that's where these kids probably are. What are they doing about it? Nothing. They're not actually trying to do anything about it. Why? Because they're benefiting from it. Okay. A lady says, I've remembered, wait, I got to put on my glasses so I can see what you're saying here. I remembered framed many places, things, many ethnic and ethnicities, many religions. I'm all encompassing in the universal love. Well, I mean, you're from those places because you did those things, right? So you have that memory. You're aware of that you've been in many cultures. And like I'm learning 22 languages. And I find that a lot of the languages are familiar to me and very easy to speak. And I don't know if it's DNA, right? Because I have a European physical body. So a lot of the European languages are very familiar to me. However, like I'm learning Irish, and I'm primarily Irish. And that language is hard and difficult for me. The spelling, especially, the way they spell words. The way they say the words is not hard. I seem to be picking that up from memory, but I couldn't write the words, which means that if I was Irish in another lifetime, apparently it was when I wasn't, when they didn't have the language writing the way they do now, because I have a hard time. But I've always had a hard time with writing language and spelling. We talked about that last week in depth for quite a while. But the languages, speaking these languages from around the world as I'm learning them, I pick them up really easy. And some people just say, well, that's just, a product of your DNA now. You happen to be like a savant or something, and so you're able to pick that stuff up. This just some of them feel comfortable to me, like I've spoken them before, and I picked them up very quickly. A couple of the Viking languages from over in Europe, Svenska, for the Swedes speak, and Finnish and Danish specifically. Even German to me seems familiar, but I grew up with a lot of that, watching television movies from World War II with all the Germans and the Nazis and that kind of stuff, and it's Spanish. But I live in California. The culture here has always been very Hispanic. The names of all the cities over here, Sacramento, right? San Francisco, San Diego, those are all that Latin, right? Came from the priests coming over here, and they were from Spain and the landowners. So most of the cities here are named Spanish names in the state of California, more than not, the big cities. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, the 3 biggest cities in California are all Spanish names. They're all right. So our culture out here is very, very integrated. So for me, that's natural. I can see that. I pick up Spanish. Spanish is my next best language. If you watch on my Duolingo, you'll see that right there, right? Denise says, Leo, can you see the future being in touch with your Akashic records? Yes. I should put it in capital letters to get my attention. Yeah, that way I don't have to put my glasses on to read. I just lean back a little bit here and use one eye. The one that sees better. Yes, you actually can. Everybody can, not just the Akashic record. But yes, you have to be careful with the future, because the future is being written, because it's separated down here. So it's not always certain. That's why Yoda said the future is very difficult. Emotion. It's always emotion, because it is. The strongest emotion in your future or in anyone's future becomes the easiest to access. And so when people look into the future, they go to the most likely place where they can see the future, and that's the strongest emotion. And that's not always accurate. It's a what if. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Psychics, well, a lot of them are aware of that and won't tell you, and some aren't aware of it themselves, and they just tell you what they see. And they know it's rare that you get a psychic who gives you possibilities. An honest psychic, when you ask about your future, will give you the possibilities they can see. That's a good psychic. When they say, I can see a couple of different avenues that you could go down, and they're both just as likely, depending on when you get to that crossroad. When you hear a psychic talking like that, and I'm saying this now, so if it gets out there in the universe, people will listen to what I'm saying and change what they're saying to actually say those things when they're not true. That's why we don't normally say that stuff out loud. But you do have access to your own future, but it's limited. Let me tell you why. Because we're supposed to be organically living. So the true answer to that question, Denise, should have been yes and no. Okay. Because if there's something that you're supposed to and want to learn on your own organically, your higher self will block you from seeing it even in your own Akashic record, because you're supposed to be learning it down here. So some of the things will come through that are non-consequential, just like when Ra's talking and Ra says this doesn't usurp the law of free will, so I can tell you about it. That is, everything that you know about yourself is also determined that way. The purpose of us being here is to be alive and kicking. It's a quote from Tool, from their song. So the purpose of us being here is that's why I put up a meme a couple months ago that said, what is the purpose, or what is the meaning of life? Or what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to give life purpose. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. So the meaning of life is to experience. So when you try to access your own future, this is why psychics will go to psychics. If it's something that you can't know because you're not supposed to know about it, you won't get a glimpse at all. You'll get nothing. So you have to go to another psychic or someone else who has the ability to see the future, or go into your Akashic record, but they can still only give you what your higher self will allow them to. We call that source or energy, or the universe. The universe will stop you. But it's truly your actual own higher self that's stopping you, or your guides. And only the honest people will actually say that, like when Drumbalo Melchizedek back in 2012 was starting to talk, and he stopped and he started having a conversation with somebody. Oh, what? Okay, I can't tell you that. He was getting told by his higher self or his guides, or both, that information was not information that they could have currently, because the society, the world, was not ready for that, and something else had to happen. And he said that out loud. Something else, there's events that have to happen and occur before you can learn this knowledge. And some people say, well, then, he's a mentalist and he's just faking that. But that's something that we don't normally tell people about, so that it doesn't become widely spread, so that it doesn't get used that way. Because you're going to have people cleverly doing that a lot, and cleverly doing it to use the Jedi mind trick on people, to gaslight people. So we don't normally talk about it live. And since I don't have like 5 million people watching my show, it's just the people, around the world that do listen to it. And I'm not live with 1 million viewers. You see what I'm saying? But I'm trying to give you a little bit more information. But the truth is you can gain anything that you're ready to know currently on your journey in this life. But you cannot see your own future when it comes to things that you're supposed to learn organically. The universe, your higher self, and your guides will not allow you to glean that unless you're supposed to. So yes and no. It's hard for us to see our own future. We can project it and see the outcome of where we want to be, and we start manifesting that and see ourselves in those places or doing that work, or getting that promotion, or buying that new car, or living in that house, or whatever, being prosperous. That stuff we can manifest. And if we continue to manifest it, it will become the strongest emotion. And therefore we have the ability to tap into that and see ourselves there, and then go, I'm going to make that happen. But if you're really looking, you can just scan your own future and you can see negative shit too. Right. So I know that's kind of a weird way of walk around that. So yes and no. You don't get to see everything, because then you would know when you're going to die, and how and where and by who. And you could have access to that when you're 5, knowing I'm going to die when I'm 10 of pneumonia. And then you would change the course of your life and probably die sooner, because you're like, I'm only going to live for 10 years anyway, so I'm going to go crazy. So the same thing, if you're older, you're going to be more prone to drink alcohol, do drugs, and party even harder, because you're like, I see in my future, I'm going to die at 22. So fuck it. I'm going to, and then now what is that? You're manifesting that now? Are you going to die at 22 because you now manifested that and you're living your life a certain way that now you're going to die exactly when you saw in your future? Or can you look at that future? That's why we try to tell everyone that the future is not actually written, because it is emotion. You can change anything. And Nostradamus, and this is why I got annoyed with society when they said Nostradamus just gets lucky. And nobody pays attention to literally the first part before he started any quatrain of his predictions, and said all of these things do not need to come to pass. All of these things that I tell you are going to be a warning that if things continue going the way they're going, this is what I see as the greatest possible outcome in the future. So I'm warning you that if you change your ways, none of these things will come to pass. And everybody ignores that he said that. And then they're like, on a long enough timeline, he'll always be right. Nostradamus hoped that none of those things happened in the future. He was warning so that they could be changed, so that none of those things would happen. He was not trying to get popular by predicting something that is going to happen. He was hoping that everyone would listen to what he was saying and make it not happen. So when people say half the shit Nostradamus said never even happened, I'm like, you realize that was his point. That was what he was trying to do. He didn't want any of it to happen. And he was trying to change the timeline. He was trying to warn people, this is what it looks like we're going to. And we don't have to do that, because we make up what we focus on is your focus determines your reality. Okay. So dreams, right? Okay. So wait, let me see what Penny said here. It's like always knowing what my tree was going to fall with. Oh, wait a minute. My tree was going to fall with me in the house, but the way I see it was I died, and yet I didn't die. Right. So, okay. So you were seeing the future, and that the tree was going to fall in the house. And in that vision that you saw yourself die. But yet when it happened, if that's what you're saying, the tree did fall, you didn't die. Right. Because you warned yourself, you saw that. So you had a precognition. You saw it and you thought that you were going to die. If you had focused on the death and that it's going to kill me and guarantee that it's going to happen, it would happen. My father was the oldest living man in my family. He died at 59 years of age. Okay, I'm 56. He died at 59. No one before him lived past 58. They all died, all of his brothers too. So he was certain that he was going to die before he turned 59. Did that make him die at 59? I don't know. Did he live his life in a way that, no, he didn't eat very healthy. He honestly didn't. So he lived his life with the determination in his mind that all the men die before they turn 59. So therefore I'm going to. And I don't have that mindset with that. I'm like, I look at them and the way they lived, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that I'm going to live in a way that's going to kill me by the time I'm 59. I'm going to live to be 105. But I have a couple of sisters who are concerned, and they think they're going to die before they turn 59 or 60, because that seems to be. But I tell them, well, that's all the men. The women live into their 80s, so I don't know what you're tripping on. But they were daddy's girls, so they worry about that. I don't. I don't know what my younger brother does. I don't know if he worries about it or not. I haven't talked to him to figure it out. But I don't think about that at all. I'm planning to turn 60 and go, huh? But I don't plan to die at 60, because my father made 1 year and died. I plan on living for a while. So I'm taking steps to guarantee that by making sure I take care of myself. Do you see? Where my father just lived his life, but he was just certain he was going to die. Well, then he died. So did that make him kill himself? Did he die because of that? Possibly, but we don't really know the answer to that. He's the only one who knows the answer to that, and he's over on the other side now, right? So let's see what else you guys are talking about here, right? What about dreams coming true, Denise? I mentioned that and then didn't get to it. So your dreams coming true are precognitive. So that is source. That is your higher self or your guides giving you the information ahead of time to warn you about it or to make sure that you're taken care of. And sometimes you get precognition to warn other people. So these are events that you're seeing in the future in a dream or a trance-like state, which is the same as being a medium. You're just doing it in your dreams first, because some people start out having the ability while they're awake, and other people only have the ability in the dreams. And once you embrace that, it becomes more and more prevalent. And eventually you start to realize that you can do it while you're awake. You're supposed to do that to develop that skill. But if you don't have somebody in your life or your family that recognizes that skill, they won't work with you to show you. And that's why I've talked about dreams many times, where there is no difference. This is the words that I said on the show, and I have that on TikTok and Twitter and everywhere else. There is no difference between this place and a dream or a daydream or a nightmare. It's all the same. The only difference is your perception of what you think is real compared to what you think is just a dream. The truth is, this is just as much of a dream as those are. And when you have vivid dreams, you come out of that dream not realizing, and you're thinking, my God, that I believe that was real. Why? Because you're perceiving things in first person, and you feel them, smell them, taste them, and the emotions. You can smell your own sweat, everything. It's that real. There is no difference. There is no difference. It's the same. It's just going on. You don't ever stop. When this body goes to sleep at night, your soul goes somewhere else and does other things, because your soul never needs to sit down and hibernate. So if you sleep for 8 hours a day, in that 8-hour time period, your soul is somewhere else doing something, occupying another body, somewhere else, on another planet maybe, or another version of you that is not you. It is a completely different separate personality that's here on the earth. Literally, you never have to sleep. Your soul doesn't go, okay. Your soul doesn't do that. Your spirit doesn't do that. Doesn't need it. So you don't just stop and just sit there and wait for your body to wake up, because we're trying to learn as much as we can. So you're going to be off doing stuff somewhere else. And sometimes you go to the halls of a mente and you're learning there. Instead of being in other bodies down in third dimension, you're in other planes, learning things, having conversations with your higher self, with your guides and things like that. And sometimes you start getting glimpses of those in your dreams, and you bring them back with you. And you're like, man, I was just talking about some real important shit with somebody of a lot of wisdom, and I just knew the answers to the universe. And then I woke up and they all just went, not there anymore. But I know I had the conversation. That, again, is to help you down here to expand your consciousness to that possibility. Welcome, Cassie. So literally, that is when you have that precognition in a dream, you should pay attention to that, because you're allowing yourself, the universe is allowing you to see it for a purpose, either to warn somebody or take steps for yourself. And sometimes just so that you know, sometimes it's not like I knew 9/11 before 9/11 was going to happen. Nobody listened to me, and I was crazy. I knew that. I know a lot more about prophecy, but I'm hoping that most of it doesn't come to pass, so I don't talk about it because I don't want it to, because I saw one of the outcomes, and that's why I know about the temporal war, right? So and I know that there's a war across time and across dimensions that's going on in the past, the present, and the future, all throughout the third, fourth, and fifth dimensions. So those of us, that's where the whole, if you ever watch Doctor Who, that TV series, which is the longest running TV series on the history of the planet, at least in this modern society, because when this is the first time we've had this technology in the last 100,000 years, but it could be that other people had this technology, which I know that they did, in societies that we're unaware of that existed on the earth 75,000 years ago, 125,000 years ago, that they had the technology like we do now. But in this cycle of the human existence, that television show, and that's about the Time Lords and the war in time, but it's also the war between good and evil, the ego and the conscience that's going on. Doctor Who, the Doctor, is traveling around against the laws of Gallifrey, where he's from, the Time Lords, and he's writing and fixing time. And he's basically running from them. They don't like him. They hate him because he's doing things without the council's approval. And he doesn't believe in the council. And eventually, if you guys watch the show, you know what happened and what is happening. So literally, that's about that knowledge and what you do with that knowledge and your perspective and his perspective. And there's other Time Lords that come in and out of that. He's married to a woman who's going opposite directions in time from him. And they have a book that they open up and find out who they are, where they are, and what they know about each other at that time, right? Because one's going one way in time and one's going the other way in time. And sometimes that switches, and they don't know when they meet each other, whether they had a conversation yet, or if that conversation's in my future, but his past. Do you see? Or my past and her future. So they have a little book to find out where they are at that moment, so they can have a mutual conversation. And that, I love that series. And if you've ever watched it, you get hooked on it pretty quick, unless you don't like sci-fi and stuff like that. Then you won't. So then you won't love it at all. It's very campy. It's done in the older style of sci-fi. So it's very low budget and cheap. It's not done with a lot of technology on purpose, because the storyline is more important, and they didn't want to get like Hollywood and make everything a Hollywood venture, because in Hollywood the technology and graphics and explosions are the main important thing in all movies, not even the words and the script. That doesn't matter so much as action and adventure. So if they can entertain the children with big explosions and flashes of light, they'll make a movie that wouldn't make it on stage. They couldn't do a stage performance out of it because there's no technology. It's like the Three Stooges, when they used to do all the eye gouges and slapping each other. They had sound effects. When they tried to do that live on television, they didn't have the sound effects. They couldn't do it on stage in front of people because they didn't have the sound effects. It wasn't as funny. They didn't realize that it was the sound effects that were making people laugh more than the actual physical humor. So that's why there's other people that, like Dick Van Dyke, for instance, who learned the physical from the ancient people that, the older people that did silent movies. He learned the physical acting and comedy and integrated that into the modern day. And he was, he's just literally just they celebrated for his 98th birthday this last month, December. And they did a big spectacular thing for his life, and he was there. And because of his ability to do that in a physical way, some people were very good at that, but some people didn't translate properly without visual aids and sounds. And my point of that is that show is very campy on purpose, because it's the dialogue and the storyline that is what they're trying to get across. And then you have to be a sci-fi fan to even get it or like it. So truly, they're focusing on specific people who are smart enough to realize the storyline and watching it for the story, not for the technology, so they get the message out to the people that they're targeting. So you either love that show or hate it, right? Okay, so let's continue here, right, with Raw. Let Raw talk a little bit more here.
Out of the Seth material we have a statement here. Seth says that each entity here on earth is one aspect or part of a higher self or oversoul which has many aspects or parts in many dimensions, all of which learn lessons which enable the higher self to progress in a balanced manner. Am I to understand from this, is it correct that there are, shall we say, possibly many experiences similar to the one that we experience here in the third density that are governed by a single higher self?
Yeah, right. Peter was talking about that and said, if you look, that Doctor Who was, it started in the 40s. It came way before, like he was saying, before Star Trek. Star Trek started in 1963, or a little bit after that, 67 or something. So right when around the time I was born, Star Trek was on the air when it first started. I saw the reruns in the 70s as a boy. Love that. Still love that now. But I don't watch the stuff now because there's been 2 more series that have been on the air in the last, like, I don't know, almost 10 years now. And they have it on the channel that you have to pay like $10 a month just to watch. So I stopped watching that because I'm already paying for all these channels and then paying for high definition and paying for cable. And now each individual company wants to pay for their plus channel, plus. And now you're paying extra. So what are they going to do? Once everybody pays for that, they're going to have a plus. And they're going to have more exclusive content that you got to pay another amount of money for. And then they're going to have plus. And they'll just continue. Or they'll just change the name of it to get you to pay for even more. And that's what they're doing. They started out with everything was free on television and on the air, and everybody could watch with antennas. Then they went to cable and made you pay for it. Then they had pay channels. So you had the free channels that you got, and you had to watch commercials, and they got paid from people to watch commercials. And then they said, well, now we're going to charge you for this exclusive content. And then they had all these international news stations start up, and then they charged you for those. Do you see? And then they had all these other channels, Showtime, HBO, Cinemax, all those channels where they played movies, which were movies that were in the movie theater that you already saw. And you had to pay money for that to get that. Then they started going, companies would start going, we'll give you a package deal that you pay a price for, and we'll have all of those for you to be able to watch on your television. And then they went from that to the companies then doing that on their own. And all of them, instead of doing that, they have their own channel, and you have to pay for that. And then you have streaming services, which is the next step, where they just now you have people because of COVID that started really good getting streaming going. Now they have these companies started to where they're only releasing these television shows on those channels, and you have to pay extra for those. So you have extra for their plus channel, extra for their streaming channel, extra to watch it in high definition, extra to watch their other channels that they have movies on. And now they just play old movies. So if you paid for Showtime, HBO, and all that shit, now you only get to watch movies that are 25 and 40 years old. They don't have any new movies on there anymore. Why? Because now they want you to pay extra to be on their streaming platform or plus channel, because that's where they're going to play all the new content. Okay. And then that new content is only going to be new for about 10 years, and they're going to have you pay for something else again. So then you're going to be paying for that other channel still, because that's what you do, right? Disney, then Disney Plus. So Disney, and now all of a sudden we have a new channel that's Disney that you have to pay for. That's like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, ESPN3, ESPN, which is ABC for sports. Now they have 7 channels for sports, and you have to pay for all of them individually. All of that is just more money. And then they expand that and have people having talk shows on all of that to draw you. And if you go there, then they continue to do it. And then everybody says, man, I'm so poor, I don't have any money. I don't understand why I can't afford anything. Well, you're paying about $300 a month for your cable. You're paying another $150 for your internet and cell phone. Then you're paying $500 to $1,000 to buy a car. And then another $600 to $700 to insure that, plus the gas, plus you have to live, and like right now, if you go to New York, it's $5,000 for a flat, which is literally one room. Got a bed on one wall, a couch on one wall, and a small little kitchen on one wall, and a bathroom for $5,000 a month. Okay. And if that doesn't sound crazy to you, then that means that you're not poor. Okay. And that's for a crappy ass apartment in somebody's basement in the Bronx. If you want a view of other shitty buildings, that's like $10,000 a month. You can look that up. I'm not exaggerating any of this stuff. All right, let's let Raw talk. So all of that, my point is, getting off of the dreams coming true and all of that, because you'll see Raw is going to end up going down that road. All of that is the modus operandi of evil people charging more and more and more and more money for the same content. They just keep shifting and charging you for, and you still pay for all the other one too. And as soon as they populate that, they come up with a new one and they put all the new content there. And then you have to pay for that. And they just keep pyramiding up, and all of them are doing it. And what you don't realize is that all of those, every channel that you're watching on everywhere, on every streaming platform, is owned by 7 human beings from the entire planet. 7 people own all of them. Just like if you have any eyewear anywhere on this earth currently, all eyewear for glasses, for sunglasses, goggles, everything that is made that goes on your face like this, that I have on, you guys have been listening on the MP3 file, but you can't see that, is owned by one man who lives in Italy. He buys up every company that starts up everywhere in the world, buys them off, and then either kills the company or controls that company and grows it too. Okay? He took over all of that, and you can look this up. There is not one, like everybody, Ray-Ban, I use Ray-Bans. All of those companies are owned by that one man. Look it all up. Look it up. Why is that? Because they want to conquer the planet, because they're evil and they do that, right? Same thing. That's why if they had the knowledge, getting back on point, and then we'll let Raw talk. That's why if everyone had access to that knowledge, then everybody would be using that knowledge to their advantage, and the world would be really fucked up. So you can't have certain knowledge. So they're trying to have algorithms that try to predict this stuff with computers, and that still only predicts the possible outcome, which is still they try to make you believe that the computers are psychic, and they're just using probabilities and percentages. And so they have an algorithm that calculates those percentages and probabilities, just like you have guys all over TikTok and everywhere saying to Siri or Alexa, when is the Third World War going to start? And Siri says March 21st of 2024. The Chinese and the Russians invade the United States and everywhere else in the world. And therefore they're freaking out over it because the computer wants that to happen. They want that to happen. They all want it to happen because they need to kill off as many people on this earth as they can. It's modus operandi. They've been trying to do it for a long time. So they're trying to spread that fear. You notice those things don't get taken down from the internet. Why? Because if they were warning about the Third World War and the governments they'd be worried about it if they didn't want it to happen. They'd be like, wait a minute, we got to take that down. You're going to cause panic. Because don't they always talk about that? It's going to cause panic for the people. You better not, but they leave that one up. Why? Because that's the narrative they're pushing. They want you to listen to that narrative and get scared, get afraid, and focus your fear on, oh no, the world's coming to an end on March 2024. Oh no, that's only a couple months away. We're all going to die in 2.5 months. They want you all to think that, because the more people who believe it, manifest it. Do you understand that? So whenever you'll notice that the only things that they tell you are negative and they don't want you to know about and don't listen to those people are the ones who are pointing out what they're doing and that they're doing something wrong and they're trying to rip you off. But if you say the world's going to come to an end, they leave that up there. If you say the Chinese government's going to invade and murder off 100 million people from the planet, they'll leave that post up. But if you say, I think the cabal, I think that the people that think they own this planet, the deep state behind all these governments are trying to kill everybody off, I will get deleted for saying that. Do you see? Why? Same outcome, but I'm trying to warn you that I believe they're up to it. They don't want you knowing about that. They'll take that down. But if I say the enemy over there, fear the enemy over there, they're going to come over here and get us. They're like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Because they want that. Either way. But if I say it's not the enemy over there, it's the enemy over here, I get deleted. Why? Well, you're spreading lies. It's the same outcome. I'm saying the world's going to come to an end, but it's orchestrated by you and not the evil Chinese. Why? Because they want you believing that the Chinese are evil and they're coming to get us. Are they? And could they be? Probably. But is that going to happen? Only if everyone allows it. Thinks about it. All right, so let's continue with Rob.
Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The correctness of this statement is variable. The more in balance an entity becomes, the less the possibility/probability vortices may need to be explored in parallel experiences. 36.4 Questioner: do I understand from this then that the higher self or oversoul may break down into numerous units if the experience is required to what we would call simultaneously experience different types of catalyst and then oversee these experiences? Ra, I am Ra. This is a statement we cannot say to be correct or incorrect due to the confusions of what you call time. True simultaneity is available only when all things are seen to be occurring at once. This overshadows the concept of which you speak. The concept of various parts of the being living experiences of varying natures simultaneously is not precisely accurate due to your understanding that this would indicate that this was occurring with true simultaneity. This is not the case. The case is from universe to universe, and parallel existences can then be programmed by the higher self, given the information available from the mind/body/spirit complex totality regarding the probability/possibility vortices at any crux. 36.5 Questioner: could you give an example of an entity, possibly one from our historical past, possibly any entity that you might choose if you don't wish to name one, and give an example of how this type of programming by the higher self would then bring about the education through parallel experiences, please? Ra, I am Ra. Perhaps the simplest example of this apparent simultaneity of existence of two selves, which are in truth one self at the same time/space, is this: the oversoul, as you call it, or higher self, seems to exist simultaneously with the mind/body/spirit complex which it aids. This is not actually simultaneous, for the higher self is moving to the mind/body/spirit complex as needed from a position in development of the entity which would be considered in the future of this entity. 36.6 Questioner:
Right. So do you see there everything that I was saying about that and the time distortion or the time dilation? And when you are able to receive that information, it's because it's not separate. Remember what I said? And the information is coming from your higher self. It's just giving you access to it in the now. But it comes from you. It just comes from a place that you are outside of this and pretending that you are this when you're here. You're not actually separated at all. You are that being pretending it doesn't know and keeping itself from knowing, at the same time being in here and experiencing this. That's hard for people to get in the beginning. They think there's a separation, just like the ego. They think the ego is something that's alive in them that's separate from them. It's not. It's you. You have both possibilities of good and evil at all times talking to you, and then you're somewhere in between those trying to figure out which one of those two you want to be. Okay, and that's why Ra refers to that as the totality, right? Distortion. Everything that is separate of the oneness is a distortion off of the oneness. But it's still the same. It's not an individual that is separate and a completely individual entity. It is just your perception that makes you think that. Let's continue.
Then the higher self operates from the future as we understand things. In other words, my higher self would operate from what I consider to be my future. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. From the standpoint of your space/time, this is correct. 36.7 Questioner: in that case my higher self would, shall we say, have a very large advantage in knowing precisely what was needed, since it would know what, as far as I am concerned, what was going to happen. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect, in that this would be an abrogation of free will. The higher self aspect is aware of the lessons learned through the sixth density. The progress rate is fairly well understood. The choices which must be made to achieve the higher self as it is are in the provenance of the mind/body/spirit complex itself. Thus the higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. However, the higher self aspect can program only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity.
Do you see? So now even referring to time is the same. So again, the higher self already knows everything that is to be known through the sixth density. Okay, so that higher self that is you is also veiled from the higher levels. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Veiled from that. to be down here. So there's a higher self above that that's aware of all of this, but we don't have access to that. We're just learning access of our higher self halfway through the sixth dimension, density. That entity that is us is governing everything from 0 to 6, to the end of 6, through 6. Veiled from everything above that. And once you ascend to the 7th density, you're now still aware of everything down here, but you don't communicate down here, physically coming here or descending like a wanderer to here. But you'll communicate to anyone who channels you from there. And now you start beginning to have access to everything from 7 and above as you're ascending. None of that is told to anyone down here. We don't get to know it. So even people who are unveiled, like myself, I still don't know it. I can get glimpses, but even that is so hard to explain. And I've had this conversation with people as well. It's so hard to explain. It doesn't translate into words down here. And so you can say, oh my God, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. The light, energy, and that doesn't do any of it justice what you can feel and see from it. So so we just can't fathom it down here because we're not supposed to. Because when you're down here, you're supposed to be learning these lessons that go up to there. So that information is there, and you get glimpses that come from the higher self because you're supposed to. And then you can determine down here what to do with that information. Sometimes you change history or the possibility of your future because what you focus on. That's why I posted that quote from Qui-Gon Jinn. Your focus determines your reality. Okay.
There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. 36.8 Questioner, I'm sorry for having so much trouble with these concepts, but they are pretty difficult to translate, I am sure, into our understanding and language. And
welcome, Kevin. He said something, so I know he's here. Kevin hasn't popped in for a while. Welcome, brother. Nice to see you here. And I think somebody said Karen was here too, or was that Kevin you were saying hi to? And I thought you said Karen. It was Kevin. Okay, so I thought, is Karen here too? Whatever. It's all good. Kevin, welcome, brother. It's been a while since you popped in. All right, let's continue.
Some of my questions may be rather ridiculous, but does this higher self have a physical vehicle or some type of vehicle like our physical vehicle? Does it have a bodily complex? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The higher self is of a certain advancement within 6th density going into the 7th. After the 7th has been well entered, the mind/body/spirit complex becomes so totally a mind/body/spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus the looking backwards is finished at that point. 36.9 Questioner, is the higher self of every entity of a 6th density nature?
See, so before he answers that, literally I was just explaining that once you move into the 7th, the looking backwards ends to the lower levels and you're looking forward. And Ra just stated that. So now Ra's going to answer this question.
I am Ra. This is correct. This is an honor/duty of self to self as one approaches 7th density. 36.10 Questioner, well, let me be sure I understand this then. We have spoken of certain particular individuals. For instance, we were speaking of George Patton in a previous communication. Then his higher self at the time of his incarnation here as George Patton about 40 years ago. His higher self was at that time 6th density.
Okay, and that was 40 years ago when he's asking this question. This was 1981, so it was 40 years before that. So it was 80 years ago that Patton did this, but let's let him answer that. Right, just giving you perspective on timeline.
Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. We make note at this time that each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by an entity to be the mind/body/spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case.
See, sorry, I want to hit pause and I let it go on. See, now Ra is explaining here that you literally, people that are your guides, you literally have access to them, and you can take that as your totality, which means usually a lot of your guides are you from another place or family members, but you can access them. So some people who can access memories think they're accessing themselves as someone else when they're actually just accessing their spirit guides' memories of what they did, because they have access to that as well for guidance. But we get confused if you don't have somebody helping you to learn to guide you into what it is that's happening to you and what information that you're gaining, having wisdom from already doing it, then people start getting delusions of grandeur because they're still living in their lower chakras, and they're like, I am Jesus. I am the Savior. I was, King Arthur. I was Holy Mary. I was, Tutankhamun. 99% of that is not accurate. It's you're accessing that memory, but you're unaware of that. But then again, there's always the cases where the truth is the higher you go, the more you realize, yeah, you were. So was I. We all are, because we all are one, because we're all the same. This is all happening in our mind. We are the creator of the universe, sitting there imagining all of this, pretending that we're all individuals and that all of this is happening, and pretending I'm sitting here with a piece of glass shaped into a coffee cup and I'm drinking coffee out of it. And I know what it tastes like. I'm experiencing that. All of it's created. It's all made up. All of it's fake. It's all hologram. This is not really happening. It just thinks it is. It's all in our mind.
The mind/body/spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur held in understanding. The higher self itself a projection or manifestation of mind/body/spirit complex totality, which then may communicate with the mind/body/spirit during the discarnate part of a cycle of rebirth, or during the incarnation may communicate if the proper pathways or channels through the roots of mind are opened. 36.11 Questioner. These channels would then be opened by meditation, and I am assuming that intense polarization would help in this.
So Rick, you were talking about making that video. Rick said it's weird. Yesterday I made a 30-second video talking about his daughter's birthday, and he couldn't send it in the chat or email because it was too big. When you're making it, you have to realize what platform you're making it on because of how big the file is when you make it. Right. I used to have the same problem when I used to have to re-edit it. I got a file from a show from Jacqueline a few months ago that her and I did, and she gave me the file, and I couldn't post that file because it was too large. It was huge because of the way she was recording it on Zoom. So when I got the recording from Zoom, it was freaking huge. And that platform has it that way so that you can't post it on any other platform. They want you to post it on their platform. So the only thing I could do was share it to my StreamYard studio, and then I recorded turn it on, let it record, walked away. Recorded it on StreamYard because that was condensing it to a smaller file by doing so, right? You used to have to do the same thing. We call that remuxing in the industry. You don't hear those words because most people don't say those. I used to have to do the same thing with videos when I was doing it before I was using StreamYard. The programming that I was using would put it in an M-Wave file instead of an A-Wave file or an F-Wave file, an FE file. So because of the file was a lot larger, we had to remux it, which means we have to then convert it into a smaller file. The same thing for when we're trying to rip the sound to go from MP4 to MP3. In fact, MP4 and MP3 are now the current files that you use instead of M-Waves and things like that. I'm sure that, I don't know if you're even aware of this technology. So because of that, MP4 files and MP3 files are what every program uses. So if you record something and it's not recording in an MP4 file and you're trying to make a video and it's recording in an M-Wave file, that file can be 5 megabytes instead of 150 megabytes. And if you're doing it we used to call that a zip folder or a condensed folder, and now they just call it MP4, right? Folder. So you used to have to zip it and then have the program unzip it. And that's actually what's happening is the MP4 file is a zip file from old, if you're a computer guy like me, that goes back to DOS. And so what you're doing is you're condensing the file and putting it in a zip file, and then that zip file is being opened, and that's what the MP4 file program is doing, opening the zip file automatically and playing it for people. So if you're recording it and it records on any other file nowadays than an MP4 file, it's a zip file, or it's not even zipped yet and it's not condensed, and then you can't send it. I have problems just trying to send MP4 files through the email or post it. I have to put a link from Facebook to a Facebook Messenger, and they'll allow that to go there. But if I want to download the program on Messenger, it won't go because the 2-hour show is too big. But if I recorded it as an MP4 file on their platform, it'll work on their platform because their platform is designed with a zip file reader. I know that I don't even know if you're understanding what I'm saying, but I know that you're an intelligent man, so I'm sure you're getting the concept if you didn't know the technology, right? Because I know we've talked. I know that you're very smart, but you may not know the technology of computers. That's the only reason why I'm telling you that, because you had made the comment. So chances are whatever you were recording that on didn't record it on the right format, or it was doing it in instead of the high definition file instead of a lower definition. And you can see that when you go to like YouTube, you can change, if you're watching a video, you can go in and hit settings and change the video to a lower quality. And when you do that, there's less information that has to go through your computer. So if your computer has a processor that doesn't process 64-bit, these days, or 128-bit, and you have a processor that only does 45 or 50 or 54-bit instead of 128-bit, and you get a file that's 128-bit, it's going to glitch and you're not going to be able to see it all. But if you change that and say, play this in this platform of instead of whatever that number is that's high def to a lower thing, it'll play fine for you. They try to get around that nowadays so people don't have to do that. But guys like me who were in computers, we had to learn that stuff and change the file because it uses more memory to create it in the. So when you're trying to make something in super high definition, that takes a lot more memory to make that in that high definition. So lower quality means less memory being used. And sometimes you can get away with that. Like so it's simple when you do, like I do memes, you do these reels and shorts, that's actually very low quality. And it doesn't matter because you're not doing a high intensity video and you're watching it on a app that is low quality as well. So they can then put a high definition quality, and it's a zip file again on there. And if your phone is capable of it, your phone will see it in high def. If your phone's not capable of it, you won't notice because it won't be shown in high def, because it'll be determined by the player, the video player that you have on your phone with that app. Same thing with your camera. So, some cameras have more pixels, and so it's a sharper image. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Do you see? Okay. Sorry, I got off on that tangent right there, but that's my IT guy coming out in me right there. I've been in computers since there were computers in the modern day, since there was DOS. And then before that, it had reel-to-reel stuff where it took an entire warehouse to go to the moon. All right, let's continue.
Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. Intense polarization does not necessarily develop in the mind/body/spirit complex, the will or need to contact the oversoul. Each path of life experience is unique. However, given the polarization, the will is greatly enhanced and vice versa. 36.12 Questioner, let me take as an example the one you said was called Himmler. We are assuming from this that his higher self was of 6th density, and it was stated that Himmler had selected the negative path. Would his higher self then dwell in a 6th density negative type of situation? Could you expand on this concept? Ra, I am Ra. There are no negative beings which have attained the oversoul manifestation, which is the honor/duty of the mind/body/spirit complex totality of late 6th density, as you would term it in your time measurements. These negatively oriented mind/body/spirit complexes have a difficulty which to our knowledge has never been overcome, for after 5th density graduation wisdom is available but must be matched with an equal amount of love. This love/light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, and during the earlier part of the 6th density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the 6th density positive. Therefore, the oversoul which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity depending upon the choice of a mind/body/spirit complex. 36.13 Questioner, then using Himmler as an example, was his higher self at the time he was incarnate in the 1940s a 6th density positively oriented higher self? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. 36.14 Questioner.
Yeah, before you ask that, I can see you guys are talking. Yeah, I messaged Kari in the Law of One chat and asked her if she can see that. The only way she wouldn't be able to see that is if I blocked her in some way or she blocked me. And I can see her in the chat, so I don't think that I blocked her, because she should be able to find my page, because my page is there, right? I mean, everybody can see it, because otherwise you guys wouldn't be here. So I just said in the chat, I asked her, I tagged her and asked her if she could see the post, the chat that or the link that I just posted, right? So I see her over there now, and I said, can you see that link? I literally just put a link to the show in that chat in the Law of One class chat for Kari to see. So if Kari, you can see that, you should be able to. I know you can't hear me now, but if she can see that, she should be able to just click it and then be in the chat here. And if not, and she can't see me, then that means that she needs to check and see if I'm blocked on her account, because otherwise she should be able to see me there. And she can't see that. Wait, it's there, isn't it? Let me see what she sees here and see why it's doing what it's doing. Yeah, it's there. Attachment unavailable, it says. Wow. Okay, I'm not sure why it says that the attachment's unavailable that I just posted for her, but it does. So that's weird, right? Because I've shared it and other people have shared it too. So let me hold on. Let me go to YouTube maybe and have her go there and figure that out, right? But it comes up as this. Yeah, so she can see it, but it comes up as attachment unavailable. So somebody else link the show into the Law of One chat and see if she sees the same thing saying it's unavailable. So for some reason, maybe it's listed as private on my channel. That's what the issue is all the way around, but I can't see that it's listed private anywhere on my channel to say, who can see the post. Let me look at the details of my post and see if it has listed it as private for some reason, if it went to defaulted as private when I wasn't saying to have it private, because sometimes that happens. And it's supposed to be public because it says I'm live, right? So that might be why it's not going into the chat in StreamYard too, right? And now, of course, my computer's doing an update on World of Warcraft right now as we're I'm trying to be live. So if my stuff acts weird and I start cutting out, that's probably why. And I apologize for that if that's what's happening. Let me see here. Viewers, I don't know if that's what I need to have up. Let's see, captions. Allow viewers to message you. I don't have that on. Why is that on? Allow viewers to rewind. I don't have that on. That's not important. Let's see if that helps. I don't know what this says. Throughout Messenger from your live video. So for some reason that was turned off. So I don't know why that was turned off in settings. Let me go to stream and see how this is on there. Stream software setup. That's normal. Unpublished. So it's published. So I don't know why the settings are. Hopefully Kari can get in. Somebody to try and link that to her and see if she can come in. Otherwise she's gonna have to go to YouTube. Yeah, Cody, send her the YouTube channel so she can go over there because I am monitoring that chat too. That one's coming into StreamYard, but the rest is not. So Cody, if you can hear me, give her the link for YouTube. Otherwise, I'll have to jump to YouTube myself and get her that link so that she can then watch the show on that. I don't know why, for whatever reason, that when I shared it, probably because I shared it to my page, because it's saying in there. When I looked at StreamYard, when I was looking into that, I apologize for those of you listening around the world. You're going, what the hell is he going off on that for? It said that the people on my page, my homepage, personal page, would only appear on there without they'd have to get permission to StreamYard. And I think that's why I stopped doing that. And I posted it on Orion Rising on that page instead of a group, and then I would share it. Today, I accidentally clicked on myself instead of Orion Rising, and that's what caused all these issues. So next time I'll make sure I don't do that again so that we don't have this issue. And for some reason, Kari can't click on it. I didn't send her the one from Orion Rising because I shared it there. She should be able to click on it there and get into the chat. For whatever reason, that's not happening. And for some reason, she's not able to be in the chat and see what's going on. So sorry, I had to mute that because now I'm going back in here so I can see the chat in here to see what you guys are doing. So yeah, Cody, let me know if it didn't work. It looks like it did, but I don't know if Kari made it over there. So if it does work and she can see me on YouTube, then she can watch the video because we are live there. And I do go back and forth right now because it's not going into the chat over here. All right. So let's continue. Hopefully, if somebody check the chat and if Kari doesn't get in on YouTube, see if you can share it from somewhere else that we've all shared it to. Go to that place and see if she can bring her over. But if it just keeps telling her that it's unavailable, I don't know why she can't get into the Facebook page there. But it's also on Twitter. So if that doesn't work, I'll go to Twitter and give her that link. Only if she talks in that one, I also have to, then I'll have to go on that on my phone and watch that chat. Right? I noticed earlier, Kevin says, I noticed earlier that Peter and someone else have had their comments blocked, Leo. I thought that was strange. See, that's my point. I don't know what's going on. So I just looked into the settings on my page, and it did say on the settings that people couldn't communicate to me. And I don't know why that defaulted that way. There was a Facebook update. And so I guess it defaulted the settings in some way. And so now all the stuff's not public. I don't know why. Right. So when literally right now, Kevin, I can see your name when you chat, but your picture is not on there like everybody else has their icon on there. And that's usually because you have to give them permission. It says that on StreamYard, but they're supposed to be able to go into the chat on StreamYard and do the same thing. It just says, user, Facebook user. That's not even happening today at all. And I think that's because I'm on my personal page and not on the page of Orion Rising, because that's normally where I go live. So I'll just make sure that that's where I go live from now on and then share it out from that to everywhere else, because that seems to work okay, right? Right. Okay. Mel says, I have Comcast and they've been having a lot of issues. Yeah, I'm on Xfinity, which is owned by Comcast, or Xfinity owns Comcast. Comcast owns Xfinity. And yeah, they've been having all kinds of issues. They were earlier, my computer went down. I was playing World of Warcraft about 3 hours ago, and it kept freezing. And I went and checked, and it wasn't World of Warcraft's problem. It was, but I know that they were working on it because they just did an update. Literally, on my computer while we were talking, gave me a pop-up that World of Warcraft was updating, and Tuesday is the day they do that. So I wasn't sure if it was just World of Warcraft, but the TV was going out at the same time, which means it wasn't. It was the internet, which means it was Comcast, right? And they're all over everywhere. And you're up in Washington, and I'm over here, and we're both on the West Coast on the same freaking crap, right? So yeah, that's why. And that company has got the fastest internet that we can get in civilians, but it's the shittiest company to have your phone. I have my cell phone, and my cell phone is actually Cricket wireless, but the Wi-Fi, I'm on 5G because I can't trust Comcast Wi-Fi. It's crap. Falls off every 5 seconds. So yeah, I know. I was trying to figure that out. Cassie said, thank you for trying to figure that out. All right, let's continue.
Was Himmler in any way in contact with his higher self at that time while he was in...
Now they're talking about Herman Himmler, right? So what is this, right? Yeah, there you go. Now, yeah, Cody's putting the link. Thank you, Cody. She put the link to my Facebook page over there, but I don't know if that's because the picture is old that she has there. It's like 2 years ago. That's the Law of One, the first episode, right? So let me go over to YouTube real quick then and get the link to this actual show, because she's got, for whatever reason, I could probably do it on my phone faster than doing it on a computer, but I'll do it on the computer here. And I'll get the link to the show from that, because if you're doing Law of One, the first one, no, that might have been on my channel over there. I'm not sure for certain, right? Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Now I'm screwing up myself here. Hold on here. So I can get her that link, and at least she can get in there if she can. There we go. That's what I needed to do. And then is this one live here? Yeah, this is live. So I apologize because the sound's going to temporarily. Okay, had to mute that. All right, so now I'll get this and send it in the chat and see if she can see it in the chat or link it, right? So I put this in the Law of One, and hopefully she can see that. Okay, so hopefully she can click on that. Let me tag her. No, she just saw it. Okay. So let me get off of there because I don't need that page open as well. I apologize for you guys for the technical difficulties, because Facebook, that's my bad, that Facebook is doing the kooky, crappy things that is not allowing StreamYard to be there. So say something when you get in the chat over there, Kari, and if I don't answer you in StreamYard, I'll have to open that window so I can at least see what you're saying. So I apologize to everybody around the world for that problem, but that's a logistical issue that these programs still haven't hammered out around the world to try and consolidate. They want us to stream on like 5 platforms, but the fight is which one is going to be able to filter all those chats. into, and StreamYard has the most, but Twitter doesn't come in here. And that's probably a negotiation between X and StreamYard where they haven't signed a contract yet. That's usually what that is all about. Right? So I do apologize if that's the case. And hopefully you know what, I'm just going to open the window and mute that. I'm going to go back over there and have that. So now so this is why before I was doing multiple computers with the different platforms so that I could see. Literally, I used to have 3 computers open all at once so I could see the different platforms because they wouldn't stream into the same chat until StreamYard started doing that. But the problem turns out that now I'm doing it at different platforms that for whatever reason aren't going into these other places, and I don't know why that's happening. Okay, so now I have that one open. So now I have 3 windows open with 3 different platforms to see the chat. And hopefully the YouTube one comes into here and Cody can get in and we'll be okay. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here. I apologize again.
Incarnate in the 1940s. Ra, I am Ra. We remind you that the negative path is one of separation. What is the first separation? The self from the self. The one known as Himmler did not choose to use its abilities of will and polarization to seek guidance from any source but its conscious drives, self-chosen in the life experience and nourished by previous biases created in other life experiences. 36.15 Questioner. Well, then let's say that when Himmler, for instance, reaches 6th density negative at the beginnings of 6th density negative, at this time would it be the case that an entity would realize that his higher self is 6th density positively oriented and for that reason make the jump from negative to positive orientation? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The 6th density negative entity is extremely wise. It observes the spiritual entropy occurring due to the lack of ability to express the unity of 6th density. Thus, loving the Creator and realizing at some point that the Creator is not only self but other self is self, this entity consciously chooses an instantaneous energy reorientation so that it may continue its evolution. 36.16 Questioner. Then the 6th density entity who has reached that point in positive orientation may choose to become what we call a wanderer and move back. I am wondering if this ever occurs with the negatively oriented 6th density entity. Do any move back as wanderers? Ra, I am Ra. Once the negatively polarized entity has reached a certain point in the wisdom density, it becomes extremely unlikely that it will choose to risk the forgetting, for this polarization is not selfless but selfish and with wisdom realizes the jeopardy of such wandering. Occasionally a 6th density negative entity becomes a wanderer in an effort to continue to polarize towards the negative. This is extremely unusual. 36.17 Questioner. Then what is the motivation for them? Oh, let me finish that question first.
He says, oh, let me finish that question. I think that's funny when they do that. All right, hold on. I got to make sure that this is not playing. Okay, go ahead.
What is the motive? What is the mechanism that this unusual 6th density entity would wish to gain to polarize more negatively through wandering? Ra, I am Ra. The wanderer has the potential of greatly accelerating the density whence it comes in its progress in evolution. This is due to the intensive life experiences and opportunities of the 3rd density. Thusly the positively oriented wanderer chooses to hazard the danger of the forgetting in order to be of service to others by radiating love of others. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in 3rd density will polarize the wanderer with much greater efficiency than shall be expected in the higher and more harmonious densities. Similarly, the negatively oriented wanderer dares to hazard the forgetting in order that it might accelerate its progress in evolution in its own density by serving itself in 3rd density by offering to other selves the opportunity to hear the information having to do with negative polarization. 36.18 Questioner. Are there any examples of 6th density negatively polarized wanderers in our historical past? Ra, I am Ra. This information could be harmful. We withhold it. Please attempt to view the entities about you as part of the Creator. We can explain no further. 36.19 Questioner.
Yeah, see, that's an answer that nobody wants to hear, right? And I'm having difficulties even trying to word this. There's information that we can't give when it comes to that, right? This is why I can say that it's very rare that a negative entity will come back as a wanderer, but not unheard of, because it does happen. And it has. But it's hard for us to then tell you who in history was that. It's almost equally as hard to talk about who on the positive side has made a lot of advancements as well. But that's why in the Star Wars saga and the movies, which a lot of people don't like the movies because they weren't as close to the book as they probably could have been. They became more Hollywood as time went on, but the stories were still close. But it kind of gets annoying. But it's still like the fruit of it. It's like the Matrix movies. They stole that from the guy who created it, so they immediately morphed it into something completely different than what he was trying to get across. But the message is still kind of in there. So that's why when Yoda and Mace Windu realized that there was a Sith Lord and that the Sith Lord was already in control when they started realizing it was Palpatine, they never saw Palpatine. They thought the Sith Lord was Vader. And they weren't sure why because there's always two. Where was the Sith Lord and the apprentice? So if Vader is the Sith Lord, where's his apprentice? And if not, where's his Sith Lord? And they didn't know who it was. And it wasn't in the beginning, it wasn't apparent to them who it was, but the movies are backwards. So it looks like it was by, episode, movie 2, book 2. And that you don't know that in the future. Well, if you read the books, you already knew that it was Palpatine when Star Wars A New Hope came out. So whenever you saw him in the book, which they changed some of it, you only saw him, as a hologram, and you didn't know who it was until they revealed it to you. But the truth is, if you read the actual books in order, you knew it was Palpatine from the very beginning. But they didn't know it until they knew it. So in the second book was when they found out who it was. And that was like a 10-year time period or a 15-year time period when he was there right in front of them. And literally on the same planet, feet away from them, some of them interacting with him. The reason for that is that they hide in plain sight. So even knowing what we know about the negative entities who have come back as a wanderer, it's hard to give that information out, not because they're stopping us from doing so, because the higher selves are stopping us from doing so because of the ecosystem and the way the ecosystem works. So in your mind, you would conjure up the devil to see that entity and the possibility of that entity. And that's why people created that evil mindset. The truth is, it's more the collective consciousness kind of evil. And so it's hard for us to give you that because you're prone in this place to focus on the negative. And that's why they're trying to get you to believe that there's a God on one mountain and a devil on the other mountain and that they're equal. That's what they're trying to tell you, which is a lie. It's not true. So to augment that, we're not able to give you that information because you're prone to elevate that person to a level that is not acceptable in the universe by the creator. Because the creator didn't create this scenario for that person, that evil, that group of evil intent to take over. It was designed so that it had a lifetime in your psyche and then it ended. Okay. So all of these safeguards are in place so that it can't take over. Ever. Wasn't designed to. The safeguards are there so that it can't. So some of the information that we try to tell you about that, we can't. You have to discover it on your own as you ascend because it's part of the ascension. And I don't think Raw explains that in that much detail, and that's why I decided to do that. If you guys have any questions, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them for you on that subject, because that's actually really hard to grasp down here, the concept of why, well, what are you hiding? What's the universe hiding? Nothing, except the over grand scale of that concept completely. Because you're not supposed to know it until you know it organically, because to know it beforehand is the problem that got us into all this, not why we're stuck, but why we have this scenario. To know all of this before you're ready to know all of this puts you back into that place where people go, oh, I am God. We're all God. So, I don't have to hurry. And God decided, man, I'm lazy. I need to speed up horse. I need to light a fire under my own ass. I was unaware of how lazy I was until I tried to have organic experience of life. And then I was like, yeah, but I'm God, so it doesn't matter. I'll just chill. So then this scenario was thought up through trial and error of other scenarios that are unimportant right now because we're not living in any of those. This scenario was set up with the ego and the veiling and good and evil and the separation of time and all of this. This entire eco structure was created to do what it's doing. Its purpose is to have an organic life. Life suggests death, or rather death suggests life, whichever way you look at it. You can't have life without death. You can't have death without life. So they're symbiotic. They have to both exist. You can't have good without evil. You can't have evil without good. You can't have light without dark, or dark without light, left without right, up without down. Well, this entire scenario was set up to be perfect. Do you see? If you know too much about it before you're ready to know anything about it, it ruins the thing. It's like me telling you when you're 5, Santa Claus doesn't exist. Ruins your belief in that structure until you're supposed to understand what it's there for. Most people never get that anyways, right? But it still ruins the magic that is supposed to expand your consciousness by telling you too early, ruining that for you. Okay, that's why you have adults going, Santa Claus is real. Santa Claus is real, but not in the way that you think. See, that's kind of hard to understand if I just tell you that. And people are like, wait a minute, so what you're saying, Santa Claus is real. Because that actually happens. But just not in a way that there's a fat white guy that's European that comes down the chimney in your house. What happens if I don't have a chimney? Well, they answered that with Scott Calvin when he was in the Santa Claus back in the 90s when they did that comedy. Just appears there out of magic, and he comes down a chimney that's not there and walks into the house and does his thing, goes up the chimney, and it goes back to being a wall. Magic. Because all of that is I'm not even going to get involved in that. That's another whole conversation. If you guys want to know about that, contact me after the show, and we'll have that discussion. I'll explain that to you. Santa Claus and all that stuff. Let's continue with what Ron's talking about. So to get back on point, some of this information we can't tell you because it actually destroys free will for you here. Even if I know it, I can't tell you it. And I know that I know it, but I can't tell you that because you're not ready for it. If you're ready for it, you can know it. And then you'll know it anyways, whether I tell you or someone else tells you. You'll figure it out on your own. All right, let's continue.
Thank you. I was wondering if qualification for contact with RA might include of the type we're doing now might include penetrating this forgetting process. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is quite correct. 36.20 Questioner, otherwise the law of confusion would prohibit this. Is this correct? Ra, this is correct. 36.21 Questioner, I was also wondering if 3 was the minimum number necessary for this type of working. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. For protection of this instrument, this is necessary as the minimum grouping and also as the most efficient number due to the exceptional harmony in this group. In other groups the number could be larger, but we have observed in this contact that the most efficient support is given by the individual mind/body/spirits present at this time. 36.22 Questioner, I'm a little fuzzy on a point with respect to the higher self. Now we each, I am assuming, have a separate or different higher self at 6th density positive level. Is this correct? Each of us in the room, that is, here, the 3 of us? Ra, I am Ra. This shall be the last full question of this working. We shall attempt to aim for the intention of your query as we understand it. Please request any additional information. Firstly, it is correct that each in this dwelling place has one oversoul, as you may call it. However, due to the repeated harmonious interactions of this triad of entities, there may be seen to be a further harmonious interaction besides the 3 entities' higher selves. That is, each social memory complex has an oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe to you in words. In this group there are 2 such social memory complex totalities blending their efforts with your higher selves at this time. 36.23 Questioner, it is very difficult at times for us to even get a small percentage of understanding from some of these concepts because of our limitation of awareness here. I think some meditation on the communication today will help us in formulating questions about these concepts. Ra, I am Ra. May we ask for any brief queries before we leave this instrument? 36.24 Questioner, I'll just ask one little short one that you may not be able to answer before the final. The short one is, can you tell me what percentage of the wanderers on Earth today have been successful in penetrating the memory block and becoming aware who they are? And then finally, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact? RA,
Now remember, I must have messed that one because he said RA, not raw, when I was editing. Now remember, this is 40 years ago. This is 1981. Stats.
MRA. We can approximate the percentage of those penetrating intelligently their status. This is between 8.5 and 9.75%.
So literally 40 years ago, only 8.5 to 9.1% of all the wanderers alive at the time actually knew that. That's a lot of people when you have 2.5 billion people on the planet, because that was in 1981. We only had 2.5 billion, maybe 2.7 billion humans. Now we have 7.9. So almost 10% of the population of the Earth that were wanderers, because that could have been 100 people. It was a lot more than that. A lot more than that. Knew about it. Today, that number is a lot higher. Okay, 40 years hence, that number is more like 37 to 40% of the total population. Sorry, I'm looking at a video right now that I guess the Japanese are landing on the moon. They were just showing some video of that. I was unaware that the Japanese were currently going to the moon, but apparently they landed on the moon, and they were just showing a video from that on. And what is this? Spacecraft burns up in atmosphere. Didn't know about that either. Over the South Pacific, somebody else burned up over the atmosphere. Hopefully there was no humans on board. Okay, so literally talking about, Raw was talking about right there that that group, which was only 3 humans, and I didn't want to go past that without saying anything about it, but there was a lot more people, did you notice, that were involved in those 3 people's communication, right? So there's only 3 humans, the 3 of them that are doing that in the physical, but there's other people that are assisting them that are non in the physical plane, sitting in the room with them doing that. Ross said that, and Don didn't ask any questions about that and moved on. Okay. Some of you become aware of that scenario as well, is my point. Let's continue here.
There is a larger percentile group of those who have a fairly well-defined, shall we say, symptomology indicating to them that they are not of this, shall we say, insanity.
Right. So getting back to wanderers and those who are awake, there's a larger portion that realize something's not right. I'm not from here. And he calls this insanity, right? They don't know this insanity because this is insane to those people. We're crazy down here. You're crazy. You're crazy to go there as a wanderer. They say up there. Okay. And some of you know that because some of you have had contact and they're like, you're the crazy one that went down there. They think we're nuts. This is insane. This is like hell. Some of the people up there, they don't want to come down here anymore. I'm not doing that again. I went through that once. I'm not doing that again, man. And some of us come down here, not because we like it, because it's necessary and we do it. So there's a larger portion of the planet, we're aware of that know that something's not right and that they feel drawn to somewhere else and they don't, you know what I mean? And they're those are the people that, so when people say, how do I know if I'm a wanderer? If you have these symptoms, there's either a good possibility that you already are waking up for the very first time to become unveiled or awake, or you are a wanderer. And to determine that takes a little bit of work to figure out whether you're, to talk with some of us to figure out whether you're waking up for the very first time or if you're a wanderer. We can usually tell pretty quickly when we talk to people, honestly, whether you guys know it or not. We can identify, we know the same ways of identifying that the cabal, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, evil people in service to self, what they know as well. They know that stuff far more than you guys do about how to identify you. They try to identify you before you were aware of who you are and get you working for them unbeknownst to you and get you working for them. They either try to convert you as you get older by controlling you, or they just try to get, we don't care, just use them until they start figuring it out, and then they'll quit, and we'll be using other people. And that's what they do primarily. Okay, let's continue here.
This amounts to a bit over 50% of the remainder. Nearly 1/3 of the remainder are aware that something about them is different. So you see, there are many gradations of awakening to the knowledge of being a wanderer. We may add that it is to the middle and first of these groups that...
Well, you know, and Penny had a comment. She said, I've always felt like I was dropped off here and left behind. That feeling is what they prey on to tell you this is a penal colony. Because they know that those people who start sensing that about themselves, they long for somewhere else. You're homesick. You know this isn't your home. You know you don't belong here. You don't fit here. Nothing seems right, even though you're trying. And you're going, there's got to be something else. There's something else. There's something I'm missing. I know it's there. It's right on the tip of my brain, right on the tip of my tongue. And then they keep telling you, no, that's, and anytime you do that, no, that's a Mandela effect. You just think that you remember that. And they stifle you from remembering other lifetimes. They stifle you from everything spiritual. They try to keep you focused in the now, and they do that with everything and all their programming. And in having that feeling, they then say, okay, so if you're going to go that far, they don't tell you this out loud. If you're going to go that far and you start looking to the stars, then we're going to go, well, yeah, okay, here's the real truth. This is like Australia was before they took their own power. This is a penal colony. You're trapped here by evil aliens that are up there watching you right now. And if you try to leave, they capture your soul, and then they flash your soul with energy in it, damages your soul, and then they put you back in a body. And they tell you that it's like the Matrix. And that you're stuck in some pod with a thing stuck in the back of your head and in some goo, and there's a robot in charge of using you for power. Because there's truth in all of that. Because there is an alien race that is sucking your negative energy like candy. Vampires, energy vampires. They love your fear. And there's humans that are doing the same thing because they also are living off of that. They love it. Gives them power. All negative people, all people in service to self, that is the power that makes them high, that is transferable from you to them that you're unaware of. You have no idea that they know it. They know it. You have no idea of it because they don't let you know it. And they're preying on you at all times, keeping you in a negative way mentally. So that fear that you're perpetuating, which does damage to you physically, gives you cancer, gives you diseases, gives you immune problems. All of that is designed. They don't care how long you live. They want you to die off early before you wake up and learn defenses against that. They don't give a fuck. Pardon my language. If you die at 10, they love it. Just make another one because you're programmed to procreate as fast as you can. And if that doesn't work, they'll just have little girls that they impregnate to get kids, to perpetuate everything. They want you dying early. If you look back in history, when more evil is in charge, the life expectancy diminishes. They just don't tell you about that in history. That's why I tell people in the United States, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, how old were all the people? You believe they were all a bunch of old guys with gray hair. Most of them were between 14, a couple of them that signed the Declaration, you can look it up, were 12. And the oldest one was like 30. That's it. The average age of the average American who lived in the United States when they signed the Declaration of Independence, 17 years of age. The average age of the average American currently today is 67. The average age at that time in 1776 of the average person in Japan was 14. The average age of the average person in Japan right now is 87. Okay? Because the average life expectancy of the average American in 1776 was 36 years of age. The average age of the average American today is 87 years of age. Okay? If you go back in time prior to that, another 100 years, the average age was 27. So people were considered adults and having children at 11 and 12 years of age. Soon as women were capable of bearing children, they were having them. As soon as boys were capable of impregnating women, they were getting married. If you look back in time to the colonial times, you see that these guys who owned entire plantations, and I'm not talking about slavery, owned plantations where they were growing crops and creating the economy. They were doing it by the time they were 15 and 16 years of age. Now people don't move out of their parents' house until they're in their 30s. So they've changed the dynamic. Back then it was get everybody to die early. And now it's like, well, if they're going to live longer, we're going to make them stupider so that they don't become prosperous ever like they did back then. Because if you become prosperous, you live longer. So then you're living longer, so they're making you less prosperous and more deadly, and all the food is killing you. Because you're living longer now, despite them. So they have to change the dynamic and try to kill you off by having a global event, world war, whatever they can do, catastrophe. And if that doesn't work, they're poisoning your food because they can't have you or get you addicted to medication that kills you. Because you're living longer now, even though they don't want you to. So before they didn't have that problem. You were dying early, so they just propagated that. They lived longer than everyone else. Royalty, upper class, they lived to be old. Everybody else did not. That was their plan. It's part of their modus operandi. When the slaves started outliving them, they had to change that. And they got into wars, and that would lower the population, but it kept getting longer and longer because people were shifting back in spirituality, because it all has to do with spirituality. Science doesn't want to believe that, but it does. All right, I'm going to play the last bit of this so we can end this session today.
This information will, shall we say, make sense. This instrument as well. The resting place is somewhat deleterious in its effect upon the comfort of the dorsal side of this instrument's physical vehicle. We have mentioned this before. You are conscientious. We leave you now, my friends. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing merrily in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai.
Right, and Denise said my grandparents and my family lived into their 90s, right? My grandmother, my grandparents, the same. My father's parents didn't. They died in their 50s. But my mom's parents were in their 80s when they died, right? They lived for a long time, and my mom's family lives to be very old. My uncle, my mom's brother, was 81 or 82 when he died, and that's about how old his father was when he died, right? So on my mom's side of the family, everybody lives forever. It used to not be that way. You go back 3 generations, and they only lived to be in their 40s. Okay. And this depends on the demographic as well. The average African American in the 1960s only lived to be 55 or 50. At the same time, the average white person who lives in a different demographic and has better food, right, and better education and better cost of living and stuff like that, they were living into their 60s and 70s, where these guys were living 20 years younger. Still is kind of that way. Women live longer than men. Okay. So it depends on your demographic, where you live, not just your race, but your race determines a lot of times where you live, right? That's why the segregation in the different races in the different countries and the integration of that has had the same African people living to be very long. So now it's become your way of life. What food you eat and whether you exercise and that sort of thing determines your whether you take vitamins and get the right vitamins and minerals and live properly. That lets you live longer than if you eat shit and howl at the moon, as my stepfather would say. So once you learn that, you take care of yourself, you can live longer. And despite them, that's why they have to get you addicted to fast food and crap food. I call it fat food. And they need to get you as soon as they can onto medication, because the second they get you on medication, that lowers your life expectancy. If you look into this, it's evident, but they don't talk about that. The sooner you're on all kinds of their medication, the sooner you're going to die. Complications because of all the medications that you've been on for all those years. And some of that comes out where people then say, wait a minute, this medication that they've been giving people are causing people to have Alzheimer's. This medication is causing them to have heart attacks. That's slowly starting to come out because people are talking about it now. But back 20, 30, 40 years ago, no one knew about it. Pharmaceutical companies have been having repeat customers all this time. And now people are starting to go, wait a minute, the long-term effects are starting to affect people. People need to look at that. So now people's agenda has changed. People like myself, when they try to get you on medications, we're trying to get off of them. And they're like, you can't. There's nothing that will do that for you. You can't do that. No one No one in the history of having COPD has ever tested having COPD and then tested not having COPD. I have. No one in the history of having type 2 diabetes has tested type 2 diabetic and then tested not type 2 diabetic. I have not. I have tested not type 2 diabetic for 2 years coming up in March because I changed. I was no longer drinking alcohol and I don't eat a bunch of sugar. And they're like, you're in remission. They said the same thing about my COPD and my asthma. You're just in remission. Eventually, it's going to pop back up. If I believe that, I'll manifest it. You're absolutely right. I'll manifest it and make it happen if I believe that. I refuse. So how do you explain that when you do the x-rays on my lungs that they're regenerated? Oh, it must have been a mistake when they x-rayed you to begin with. I had a pulmonologist say that to me and then went into more details and looked it up and said, nope, because the scar tissues are there in both images from when you had your pneumonia and bronchitis when you were a teenager. And then there's scar tissue that shows that you had a COPD. My ex-wife, my first wife, she had what's called psittacosis. She worked at an animal clinic, animal hospital, an animal museum for animals that get injured and can't go back into the wild. And then they have this place called the Lindsay Museum. She worked there. And apparently when they put in the new building, there was the recycling of the air wasn't filtering out the air, and the feces from bird poop gets into the air and becomes airborne. And if you breathe it long enough, it does damage to your lungs and creates holes in your lungs, just like smoking does when you get emphysema. Only it's not damaged because of nicotine in the smoke. It's done from and so it's not called emphysema. It's called psittacosis. I believe that's what it's called. And so she had holes in her lungs. And that caused her to be like asthmatic and chronic, like as if you had emphysema. So they were kind of treating it like that. And they were having her get on this medication. And she was holistic and refused to just buy into that. And she decided that she needed to heal her lungs holistically and look into ways of doing that and making her lungs stronger. And she refused to buy into them with their medicine, even though they were trying to get her to do that. And over the course of the next 20 years, her lungs regenerated, and they said that they would never regenerate, couldn't. And then when she went in to have a checkup, they were like, you don't have any holes in your lungs anymore. And she just smiled. And they're like, how did that happen? She's like, magic. But she knew that she had learned. She was a Reiki master, is a Reiki master teacher. I say was only because we don't talk anymore. Is a Reiki master teacher and was using that information and that healing ability from her own self to heal herself. But she was also changing her foods and working on things that would help improve her lungs. And they rehabilitated. And they're not supposed to do that. So they won't, to this day, admit that she's free of it. They'll just say remission because nobody has had that happen. Just like me, I'm on record as, well, he had COPD in 2013. And by 2015, he no longer had COPD. And since 2015, he's never had COPD problems. And then my asthma, which I said I also have asthma, and that's going to go away as well. And they were like, nope, that took a little bit longer, but I have an inhaler that sits on my nightstand. And I don't use it, don't need it. But I used to, and I don't anymore. So I'm not the only person, is my point. You have people out there who have fibromyalgia and all kinds of issues. And when they start looking into things and they go to these pharmaceutical companies and doctors and they give them all these pills and they realize over time, this is not working. It's not helping me. I need to seek a different alternative. When people turn to holistic things, a lot of times, and your mental ability, so you could turn to holistic things and believe it's not going to work and it'll never work for you. But your mindset, your focus determines your reality and creates your reality. Your mindset. If you decide I am not going to lay down and have this disease that they're telling me I'm having, and I'm going to do all the things that physically are going to help my physical body, not just ignore you know what, I don't believe in your cancer and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to continue smoking. I have lung cancer and I don't care because I'm going to heal. and I'm going to eat all kinds of sugar and do all the bad things. You keep doing that, nothing's going to change. Even if your mindset says that, your body can't heal itself. But if you change everything about your life, stop eating crap, stop eating all the sugars, stop eating all the things that are, and stop taking all the crap into your body and cleanse your body of all this stuff without going like, totally crazy. But it's not hard to do. Change your diet and eat well. Change your diet, eat well, exercise, sleep well, get in the right mindset. Your body starts healing itself because you're taking away all the things that it has to fight against, that it's poisons. Take those out of the equation and your body has nothing to do but fix itself. Okay? Right? Good for you, Penny. I'm glad you quit smoking. I had to quit smoking too. I smoked forever. I started when I was like 8 or 9, man. By the time I was 12, I was smoking like a pack a day. Had one in my pocket when I would go to school. Pick one up on the way home, and a pack of cigarettes, and put them in my sock and hide them when I got home. I went until I was 45. I quit smoking April 6th, 2013. I smoked my last cigarette at, what time was it? 1 o'clock in the afternoon when my then was fiance that I married, my second wife, came, and I was packing all my stuff to move in with her in Arizona. And I got in the, smelling like a cigarette, got into the U-Haul truck with all my shit in it. And she was like, "Oh my God, you smoked a cigarette." Last one. Smoked it right there. Never smoked another cigarette. Okay. And then I had to change the way I was eating as well. But I was still an alcoholic, and I kept doing that up until 2 years ago in March 3rd. It'll be 2 years since I stopped drinking alcohol. The alcohol was making me type 2 diabetic. It was overtaxing my liver, and it was making me have a fatty liver and all that sugar that I was consuming. And then the carbs I was eating when I was drinking to get, to try and keep me from being too drunk and having a hangover the next day was just in my body, just all the time. I was, when you don't realize it, when you're drinking, you drink a lot of alcohol, you wake up the next morning, you're still technically and legally drunk. You just don't know it because you're used to it until you burn off or eat some food to burn off the alcohol that's still in your system from sleeping it off, trying to sleep it off. So I was walking around with high blood sugar, probably over 200 all the time. And so that made me go into type 2 diabetic. The second I quit that, it went down to normal. Literally, my blood sugar level is below 100 at all times now. Before, when I was drinking, I would test it in the morning. It'd be about 145 to 150, which is way high. 200 is stroke or coma. And I would test in the morning at 145. Okay, now I test in the morning and I'm at like 90. 70 to 100 is perfect. And so I'm in that below 100. I'm 10 points below 100. Most people come in right between truly 70 to 90, or 70 to 100. But most people, if you test them, they average somewhere between 90 and 100. And depending on what you eat a bunch of stuff right now and you test your blood in a half an hour, 45 minutes, you eat a bunch of carbs, it's going to be about 130, 140. And then it goes back down because your body will kick insulin in. So you make these changes and you stay on them. You eat better, you eat vegetables, all of these things that you consume have antioxidants and things for your body to boost your immune system. And when you stop eating fast food and crap food, processed food, and you start cooking your own food, making your own food, you feel but you have all kinds of energy. Then you got to do things that makes you lose weight because now you're like, man, I got freaking all kinds of energy. I'm going to go run. I'm going to go walk. Where before, when you're eating crap, smoking cigarettes tightens your blood vessels and doesn't let the oxygen get in, so it lowers the amount of oxygen you get, so your energy level is low. And then you're trying to drink caffeine to get your energy level up, and that burns you up. And then you're putting sugars and sweeteners in it, and then your body is bloated up with water, trying to process the salt and the sugar that's in your body to get it out, because that's how your body gets that stuff out of your body. So you eat all these foods that are high in salt and high in sugar, and you gain 10 or 15 pounds. That's why these places on television, Weight Watchers and all that, was like guarantee that you're going to lose like 7 to 10 pounds in the first week. Yeah, because they're giving you food that is low in sodium and low in sugar and high in fiber. So your body is just going to let all of that out, and then probably has nutrients in there that act like aspirin that lower your inflammation. And your body is inflamed because it's trying to get rid of all that crap that's in your body. You start eating well, your body loses all that excess water and gets the salt and sugar out, and then starts processing out the other stuff. So you lose weight. You can start eating properly without being on a diet. Just don't eat crap food. You'll find you'll lose depending on how much you're overweight. If you're more than 15 pounds overweight, you can drop 10 or 12 of those pounds in the first month alone just by being diligent and eating right, because your body's mostly bloated now with water trying to get rid of all that stuff. The reason I tell you this, let's get back to the soul. Your soul is the same way. The more you're negative, the more it bloats up with the nasty taste of that negative energy. And the more that you change your ways, the more you feel, if you become what you are, and if you are in service to others and you become that, it feels right. When that feels right and you do the same with your body and that feels right, everything starts to line up. Next thing you know, everything starts working properly. You don't need as much sleep. You don't have to eat as much food. You now have more energy, so you exercise more, which means you have less weight, which means you don't have to consume as much fuel to move your big fat body, right? And you feel better about yourself. You have a better mentally. You feel clearer, crisper, and they don't want you doing any of those things, because when you start thinking properly, you start your ascension. They want you diminished mentally, foggy in the brain, fat, overweight, and having all those issues so you die young. That is their plan. That is actually being done to you on purpose, because they want you to die young because you're living too long. All right. I love you guys. I'm going to go. We'll start the next session next week. It's a little bit after 5. I got to go close the windows and get out of here. So I love you guys. Or I don't mean leave. I mean close the windows and get out of here and go and shut up and sit there and relax. It's been a good Friday, good Saturday for some of you, depending on where you are in the world. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where you are in the world tuning into the show. I love you guys. I will see you guys next week, right? Peace out. Peace out. I haven't said that for a long time. That's right out of the 80s, right? Word. That's another one right out of the 80s and 90s. Peace.